You are listening to Nicholas Acosta with Downtown Expert Realty in Orlando, Florida, host of the podcast Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Nick sits down with guests to talk about how real estate works. You can check out his podcast at www.downtown.expert or 407-508-8809. Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert. Enjoy the episode.
Good morning, everybody. This is Nicholas Acosta. This is Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast coming to you live from beautiful downtown Orlando, Florida, across from Lake Eola Park. This show is for anyone, everyone to talk about real estate and how it works. I'm Nicholas Acosta, a licensed Florida real estate broker with Downtown Expert Realty of Florida. Today, you can always reach me at 407-508-8809 or at downtown.expert on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Enjoy the episode. Today's guest with me is Jamie Hoover and Andrew Ray over at Blanchard Insurance, and they're also the paid advertisers of this segment. Jamie and Andrew, welcome to the show today. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, doing well, Nick. Appreciate it.
No worries. So, like we were talking about, you know, how the weather, it's kind of funny how, like a few days ago, we were like, I don't know, over 100 degrees outside. But this morning when I went to take my Bichon Frise Stewie out for a walk downtown, it was nice and breezy. And then we got a little bit of rain coming down this morning as well. How about where you guys are at? What's the weather like there?
Oh, well, thankfully it wasn't raining this morning. There was a little breeze, and they say mid-80s today, so it was definitely refreshing to walk outside. Not quite open your windows weather for me.
Yeah, not quite there.
but we're getting there, so it was definitely a relief.
No, definitely. And like we were talking about in pre-show, and we can talk about this, both you, Jamie and Andrew. I noticed, like in Lake Eola, like I want to say maybe about 4 months ago, I was kind of like concerned for the lakes downtown because we had, we went through a little bit of a dry spout there for a while, and the lake looked like it was losing a lot of water, and the roots of the trees in the lake were kind of exposed. But now we've had such a significant amount of rainfall, and the lake is getting a lot more, filled up with the water. But then also, you guys were mentioning something to me before the show about how your insurance Facebook page for Blanchard Insurance got you guys shared some posts from some people out there that were sharing with us these flooding in certain areas in Central Florida. Would you like to? Could you guys talk about that to the audience?
Yeah, we definitely had a lot of rain this weekend, everybody in Central Florida, and we shared some posts on our Facebook page for Blanchard Insurance for what some of our clients and partners were dealing with when it comes to the water rising. And thanks, Nick, for sharing the pictures. And people did get concerned. We also had a lot of calls flooding in, no pun intended.
Oh, right.
In regards to, well, that's the only thing you're going to get from me today. From rising waters. Water was coming in close to their back door. They were getting concerned. A couple of the calls were, hey, everybody in my neighborhood was in a flood zone when I bought this house, but I wasn't. So I didn't think I needed flood insurance. So a lot of the calls and questions coming in were, if I get flood insurance and I'm not in a flood zone, how much does it cost? And what is it going to cover? And, what companies are available to write that type of business? So that's what we're going to get into a little bit this morning with Andrew Ray. Andrew, if you call our office, chances are you're going to talk to Andrew here in Central Florida. And he today is our flood expert. So that's what we're going to go into a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. First thing that we kind of wanted to start on is, just obviously the distinction between, flood damage and then your regular, weather damage that's covered by your standard homeowners insurance. So, obviously we have a couple of, tropical storms that are off the coast right now. So, we're kind of in that situation where people are, starting to ask more questions about what is exactly covered by my insurance, what isn't covered by my insurance, do we need flood insurance? So the distinction between, flood insurance and regular homeowners insurance is exactly where the rising waters originate from. So flood insurance covers specifically rising waters that originate from outside of the home. So now in this specific example, there's a couple of named storms off the coast here. So, most people are going to think that, obviously it's a hurricane or, named storm, so it's going to be covered under my hurricane deductible. Now, that's not always the case. Obviously, if there's, specific damage to your property that's caused, specifically by the hurricane, say, for example, a tree falls on your home, your roof gets lifted off of, the actual dwelling itself. So that's still going to be covered under, your standard homeowners insurance under your hurricane deductible. Now, in the case that, a hurricane comes by and it causes, floods to accrue in that area, and that flooding water does get inside of the dwelling, that is where your flood insurance is going to come into play. So like I said before, your flood, the flood damage is, determined exactly by, like I said, rising waters that originate from outside of the home. So
in situations like this, people do get concerned, but it takes them getting nervous or scared about rising waters coming into their back door or pooling up in the front yard like the pictures showed, or if you're on a river on the water's, covering the dock. And that's where you started getting nervous this weekend. Mm-hmm. So what about that's single family residences?
Yes.
Nick, we know you live in a condo in downtown, and actually right. Andrew does as well, and another agent of ours in the office. So what would you suggest to the condo owners? I mean, because now we have a lot of clients beachside. Mm-hmm. I did see some pictures of more of a storm surge situation even happening this weekend because the weather was coming in so strong. Mm-hmm. So what about for condos? Nick, have you ever, thought about that in your condo or had a situation like you said, the Lake Eola and some lakes were starting to fill up?
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you guys brought that up because one thing to note is, yes, we are in a high rise. However, and I mean, we're pretty significantly high up in terms of our elevation, but the lake is really close. And when we do get like storms like we had, I think it was like Sunday when the rain was coming down sideways when that storm came through, like our parking garage. So we park on the 5th floor, and they do have actually sandbags in front of the emergency exit doors because there have been known times with those emergency stairwells, water has come in the doorways. And even on the ground level, when we get significant rain on being nearby the lake, especially now with what's happened with, I really don't think there's the ground, in my opinion, and I'm not a environmentalist or a research on soil, but I would say that the ground is too saturated, and now the water is not really going into the ground. It's just sitting there. So like in our front entrance of the condo, in the common area, to the rotating door, and then the entrance is there, they've had to put sandbags up there a couple times because water tends to want to leak inside or come in under the door jamb out front. So, yeah, I mean, I think maybe years ago, I wouldn't have thought of it being a situation, even though we're technically considered a non-flood zone in our unit. But the building itself, I think that's going to change in the future because of our, environmental impacts that are happening with climate change. That we're going to tend to see more water coming into, buildings like this. Even if it's, I don't even think we're completely out of the woods when it comes to a high-rise anymore, like it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, specifically speaking to, condos, obviously you're going to be at a little bit less of a risk being, a couple stories up. So, as far as people that are still on the, the ground level, I still think that, that still poses a risk for flood damage and whatnot. So it still makes sense in those situations. Even being a couple stories up, obviously you're not going to get, flooding waters that originate, from the water that are rising up to your apartment, but you still may have some pooling of water generally just outside of your apartment that, with wind-driven rain and whatnot can, seep into the actual unit itself. Obviously, that's still, a little bit less of a risk than your typical flooding where you're, on the BFE, the base flood elevation level. So, I mean, it's definitely something to think about, but, just not as much of a risk. I've definitely, advised a couple people not to purchase flood insurance. But as far as flood coverage, it does vary case by case. It's exactly like what you're saying. You could be mapped to be in what's called a non-flood zone. So you're in flood zone X where you're not required to purchase flood insurance. You haven't been, identified to be in a high flood risk zone. Now, what that means necessarily is not that you're not prone to flood damage. It's just that they've identified you to say that, hey, you're actually at a lower risk, so they're just giving you better pricing. So you're going to be in what's called the preferred pricing program. So it's actually a good thing if you're in a non-flood zone. Obviously, it's not, it's never good to have, flood damage itself, but being in a flood zone X gives you the preferred pricing. So if you still think that, hey, even though my property is not in a flood zone technically, and, I still think that it's, at risk for flood damage, it's a good thing because, you're going to have better pricing on the flood coverage.
Well, and it's constantly remapping too. So I think on your side, Nick, dealing with clients and they're looking at a property and it is in, all of Florida is a flood zone. We're on a peninsula, it's under sea level, so all of Florida is going to be a flood zone. It's just a matter of the mapping and whether it's low risk with preferred pricing or high risk areas where the pricing's, going to be more. And that's when the mortgages require it, is when it's, the higher risk areas. Mm-hmm. But for the clients, just because they're in an X when they buy the house, doesn't mean they're always going to be in an X. FEMA goes through and does the flood remapping, consistently every so often.
Random areas at a time, so they don't necessarily specify what areas they're doing. But yeah, they are constantly remapping the area. So there's always a chance that, even if you are in flood zone X, that they can remap you to, what's identified as a higher flood risk. Speaking on that as well, so in some of those examples where they do get remapped to, that flood zone where they're identified to be a higher risk, if you originally had purchased flood insurance when you were in a flood zone, or when you were in a non-flood zone, you're going to be grandfathered into that rate for a couple years as well. So that's another reason that you want to buy that when you're not in the flood. Yeah, exactly. So you're going to get better pricing for that first couple of years when they do remap it over. Whereas, your neighbors that didn't carry flood insurance are going to be paying, probably double to triple the amount.
And it's more so going to happen on the coastal areas. Obviously the remapping is going to, really it is very, I'm not going to, random would be the word off the top of my head, but I'm sure that they have some algorithm, that's picking and choosing the areas to remap. But we do have a lot of clients on the East and West Coast and do a lot of coastal business, and those areas are remapped pretty consistently. So, you're 2 or 3 blocks off of A1A and they weren't in a flood zone, but like Andrew said, they had purchased preferred, flood insurance, and then they got remapped and now they have a better savings years later, now that they're in a flood zone. So, and then the condos on the coast too. A lot of the condo buildings are in flood zones, and people are surprised that if they're on the 20th floor, they are required to have flood insurance. So if they have a mortgage and they're on the 20th floor and the building is in a flood zone, they're going to be required to have flood insurance. So, we've all seen the movies with the tsunamis and the buildings. So in my mind, that's kind of where that comes through, I guess.
No, I agree with that completely, guys. And let's take a quick break for 15 seconds, guys, and we'll be right back. And thank you guys for watching and listening to us today. This is Nicholas Acosta, Home to All, with Jamie Hoover and Andrew Ray of Blanchard Insurance. We'll be right back in just a second, guys. Hey there, guys. Welcome back. So that's I like what you were talking about, Jamie, about I know we kind of got into people don't get scared out there with the tsunamis, but it is still a possibility because
it is 2020.
It's 2020 because all the hurricanes we have out there.
Nothing would be a shock right now.
Right, exactly. And no, that's a good point about that though, is I've always thought, because I was, as you got, I think Jamie knows, but I'll tell you too, Andrew, that I was born and raised in Pinellas County on the coast, and I grew up on the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, my father's house had flood insurance. His house was paid for, but he still had flood insurance in case of a storm surge. And then people would say, like, for instance, okay, I lived in the city of St. Pete before I moved to Orlando over a year ago, and I was considered an ex-flood zone, didn't have to carry insurance, but I did have insurance policy there. And we were considered to be, 16 feet above sea level. But I always thought that was in the whole neighborhood I lived in was not in that whole section of the neighborhood was not in a flood zone, according to the flood map. I'm sure that's going to be redone, or they're going to redo that in the future here shortly if they haven't already. And the reason I say that is because whenever they said, "Oh no, you're not a flood zone, you don't need flood insurance," well, I said the Gulf is not that far to my west, and the Tampa Bay is not that far to my east. So if there's a really bad enough storm and that water gets sucked out of the bay, that water is going to come rushing in. And actually, I heard from neighbors that have lived in my neighborhood for 30 years that the water in the bay actually came up to 1 block away from where my house was previously that I used to own there. And I'm like, if there's a bad enough storm surge, it doesn't matter if you're 16 feet above sea level in Florida. That water can come rushing in no matter what, if the conditions are right for that to happen. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yes, for sure. And I think too, with the way that development is going and the new developments in all the areas, water is sloping differently. So the more land that's developed and houses are built on, all of that water is going to end up going somewhere. Right. So back when you were there, it may have came in 1 block, but depending on what's happened around that neighborhood or down the road at this time, now it might be to their back door. Right. So, I kind of think another maybe preconceived notion that people think with flooding is they're buying flood insurance because you're picturing your whole house having to be underwater for that to kick in, right? But it's just measured on, inches up the drywall that you have to replace, your baseboards up, personal property is a big portion of it. So if water were to come in and now you're dealing with damaged furniture, just think about a quarter up your wall is still a lot of damage to have to rip out, replace in personal property. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily flood as in everything's floating.
Your home's not floating away. It's more a couple inches of flood damage. Yeah, that's one of the things too that, especially when you're in, obviously, the flood zone X is where you're not required to carry flood coverage. Obviously, being in a flood zone where you are required to carry flood coverage, your lender is going to require that you carry it up to, your dwelling limits on your homeowner's insurance. So, God forbid there's a total loss, they're still going to get their money back. So now, for example, you're in a flood zone X, you're not required to carry, flood insurance. However, you've looked at the property, for example, like what you're saying, your neighbors have said, hey, there's flood damage around here. In those cases, it definitely makes sense to carry some sort of flood coverage. And then we also have the option of, not giving you, the limits up to your homeowner's insurance. We can give you just a couple, just a little bit of flood coverage. And the reason for that is, for example, what they say about 1 inch of water damage per 1,000 square feet is going to be, roughly $10,000 worth of damage to the home. So we like to give you, enough coverage that will cover for, a couple inches of water damage to your home. So obviously it depends on, the square footage of your home. So if it's, a 2,000 square foot home, it's obviously a single story there, then they're going to need, 2,000 per inch there.
Yeah.
Or 20,000, excuse me.
Yeah, there were a lot of pictures this weekend on Facebook. I'm sure everybody saw some friend or family member posting something. Just to kind of, put it in perspective, if you're in an X flood zone, you're talking about premiums. What are the preferred rates? $300, $399 a year.
And then you can max out the coverage. I believe it's $516 for the year.
Right. So for max coverage, if you're in a zone X, so definitely give us a call. Ask for Andrew when you call. He knows all the ins and outs of flood, and he can help you get that protected. And these are the times that you want to think about it, when it's top of mind and you're seeing it posted everywhere. And then we even had an auto call over the weekend as well. And Nick, I know you used to do adjusting for auto. Yep. So Andrew was dealing with a claim or guy, what did he do? He drove through
we had a client
water.
who, it was raining pretty heavily outside. He drove through what he thought was, just a couple of inches of water. Turned out it was a little deeper than what he thought. He drove his car out of the water area. It was a newer, I think it was a hybrid car, so there was some water that got into the engine, and eventually it slowed down and came to a stop there. And so, he had to get it towed over to the dealership there, and then, they told him that, obviously there's, water damage to the actual engine itself, so it's not going to be covered under warranty, and to file it under insurance. And so, I had to have that conversation with him, what exactly happened, is the damage going to be covered under insurance, which it should be covered under his, comprehensive deductible there. So, you obviously have your collision and then your comprehensive deductible. So that would be covered under, your comprehensive deductible.
So it's not just homes that, that people are worried about. It's flood in general. And what coverage do they have on their autos? What coverage do they have on their homes? And we're happy to do any review on all of the policies that they have. It might be better for them to stay with what they have and who they're with. Loyalty is important. We respect the loyalty that our clients have for us, and we're more than happy to offer advice.
Yeah. Sometimes, we don't always have a market for clients, and at the end of the day, we're just trying to take care of people. So if we have to advise you, to look elsewhere, I have no problem doing that. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're just trying to help people out and educate people, and make sure that you're properly insured. God forbid anything ever does happen.
No, that's awesome. So yeah, you guys may have seen this already here. I just want to pull this up on the screen because this is important to realize, because since we're talking about flood today, everybody, this is like, I saw this on the news this morning. I was watching the Today Show or ABC News Live or whatever on Hulu, and I've never seen anything look like this before in a map in terms of like the condition of a storm, like a tropical storm. Look out where it's at and how far the rain bands go from that storm. It's just incredible, and in how the way the world's changing or the climate's changing out there.
And it is sad in the lower lying areas of Texas and Louisiana. And I remember after Katrina and how that whole area in New Orleans was, so severely below sea level.
Right.
And the people did not have flood insurance. And then statistically, after all that was cleaned up, still only 8% of the people there, or roundabout, don't quote me exactly, still did not have flood insurance in a flood zone, even after experiencing everything that they experienced. So it's just something that you have to take a look at your whole policy review and your budget and try to fit something in, because like Andrew said, with the hurricane coverage and deductibles and all of that, the flood is not included in some cases.
Yeah, that's why I always stress to people, it's important that you have a good agent on your side, whether it's, us or another agent. It's
right.
really important, that they stress, what the cover or what your policies cover, what they don't cover. Obviously a lot of people, nowadays, especially in our industry, they're very price sensitive. They're just sending out quotes, and they're just not really too worried about, how you're going to be protected at the end of the day. So we try to, take a different approach here and make sure that we're really going above and beyond for our clients. And, we're pretty much trying to treat everyone like their friend, family.
It's peak season for sure. The picture that you showed of the hurricane season, and they're getting pummeled on the Gulf Coast. And, just there are waiting periods for things too. Sometimes you can't call and just get flood insurance that day.
Yeah,
so
that's another thing that I wanted to make sure
ready.
that we specifically went over was it's very important that, you don't wait until the last minute, and, there's obviously, storms off the coast. It's important that in the future, that you're thinking about that ahead of time, because especially with the flood insurance that's through, the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program, they're going to give you a 30-day delay on the coverage. So if you call us today, we find coverage for you, it's going to be actually 30 days before that coverage kicks in.
Not on a new purchase, but on
not
the
on a new
existing.
purchase. Yeah, so it's always different for closings. They'll make exceptions for that. But if you're, just generally, yeah, you have a home, you have your normal insurance, and you're like, hey, there's a storm off the coast, I want to get coverage. Keep in mind that coverage isn't going to start until 30 days after.
Well, and to add to that as well, just even with getting home insurance or anything at this point, we are so limited with markets in Central Florida because of what we've talked about in prior shows. The risks are high for the insurance carriers here because of fraud, water and roof fraud. And the sooner the carrier can close for an excuse or a reason, and a hurricane is definitely one of them. There's no certain mileage. There's no box anymore. It used to be, if it gets within a certain box off the coast, then the carrier can shut down for finding new business. And now it's anytime they feel like it. Once one starts, they all start. I mean, I think last week we turned our head last Friday for just a second, and all of a sudden everybody was closing because of Tropical Storm Sally. So it happens very quickly. So in hurricane season, just be proactive.
Agreed. So with our last 5 minutes, what from either you, Jamie, or Andrew, what do you guys have for like something to leave everybody with for the day, like a positive thought or some kind of words of inspiration or encouragement to the listeners and viewers out there today? To be encouraged. Yes, that's fine.
Well, and I would talk to somebody about this last night. It was beautiful out, so we went for a walk over by Gemini Springs, and we were saying just positive thoughts in general. Really no certain phrase or motto, but if we walked around the office all day, complaining, everything would go to, heck. So it's
right.
The small things. You gotta blow it off. And this has been a rough year for everybody, but we need to just positive thinking, positive start, positive thoughts, and supporting our teammates and working together. So no particular phrase, just let some things roll off your back. Don't take everything so seriously. That's what I would say.
I would say, obviously with
Are you guys there? Can you hear me? Sorry about our technical issues, guys. We do apologize. Connection issue here. I'm trying to see if they come back before the end of the show. Sorry about that, guys. Just want to share, like Jamie Hoover and Andrew Ray of Blanchard Insurance. They were talking to you guys about these pictures that were posted to their Facebook group or business page this weekend in regards to that. It looks like we may have lost their connection, so I do apologize. And we're going to go ahead and we'll wrap up the show. But thank you again to Blanchard Insurance for being a paid sponsor. Hold on 1 second.
Back? Okay.
there you
You guys hear me?
I don't know what happened to us, but we're back.
It's all good. No, it's all good. And then, so Andrew, what were you saying before it got disconnected for a second? I apologize, guys.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of, piggybacking off what she said, and, just with everything going on, it's very important that you kind of take a step back and, think about the things that are important, small victories matter as well. So just, kind of put things into perspective. And I know everyone's, kind of worried about what's going on, but, take things one day at a time.
Every week on our team calls, we've been starting what's everybody's wins, for last week. What happened that was exciting, whether it was maybe a sales production goal or helping a client with something, and learning something new, something. So that's been a positive start. We do that on Monday morning. So it's been good teamwork and into the positive thinking.
Good vibes only.
That's right.
Right. I couldn't agree with you guys more. That's awesome stuff that you guys are doing over there at Blanchard Insurance. So with that, everybody, this is Nicholas Acosta, a licensed real estate broker in the state of Florida with Downtown Expert Realty LLC and host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with Blanchard Insurance, one of our paid advertisers for the show. We're grateful to them for supporting this podcast and coming to you guys live on 6 podcasts or social media streams, as well as 8 podcast streams. And today, the the Home to All podcast was invited by Amazon or Audible through Amazon. So we just joined that RSS feed today to Amazon. So now we're streaming on more platforms or Amazon devices. So again, this has been Home to All inclusive real estate podcast, live for you, downtown Orlando, Florida. You can reach me at 407-508-8809 or downtown.expert. It's www.downtown.expert is my website. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at downtown.expert. Thanks again for Blanchard Insurance, being a paid advertiser. From downtown Orlando, Florida, wishing you all great real estate health. Till next time, stay safe out there. Be kind to everyone around you. Goodbye to next time. So Jamie and Andrew, thank you very much for joining me today. Are you guys going to be with me next week, or will Mike be back in the chair next week?
I don't know. We haven't decided yet. Depends on the topic.
All right, cool. Yeah, you guys should also.
Let's see what happens this week and what's fresh on our minds.
Definitely, and we can always, do up to multiple, screens like this, where, like, if it's you and Andrew, and then Mike, and then Allie wants to join, and you all want to talk for that 30-minute panel or something, we can have multiple screens going, because I think with StreamYard you can have up to 10 windows or videos going at the same time. So that's cool.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. I don't know if you can handle that, Nick.
It's okay. I'll be fine. Well, it's all good. Thank you guys again for joining me. And thank you to Blanchard Insurance, like I said, to be a paid sponsor of the show. And I'll look for you guys next week. And everybody out there listening, have a great day. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Nick.
All right, you're welcome. Welcome to Blanchard Insurance, or welcome there, Andrew, to the team over there. You guys are awesome. So.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, I'm going to go ahead and send it to the credits, but have a good day. And I'll talk to you, Andrew and Jamie, soon. All right?
Okay.
Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to Nicholas Acosta with Downtown Expert Realty in Orlando, Florida, and host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Check out his website, www.downtown.expert or 407-508-8809. Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert. See you next time.